Council present, the time 6 p.m. Be it resolved that this regular meeting be open for business and that the minutes of the inaugural meeting December 6, 2022 be approved. Motion. Cheryl, and second. Edie, all in favor? Carried. So we have a delegation, Mr. wait. We begin this meeting by acknowledging that we are on land that's been inhabited by Anishinaabe nations. We'd like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Sagamok Anishinaabe, and we would like to give thanks for sharing this land. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof? None being heard. We have a delegation from Mr. Keith Emery from Massey Agricultural Society.
I think we're gonna flip them around, I'm gonna do the Vet Services Committee first.
Okay,
Only because I anticipate that we're not gonna have a whole lot of questions about Vet Services.
Okay.
And then if we feel like we need to spend a few more minutes on the Ag Society, we can. So I'll either look over somebody's shoulder or have to look at my own copy, because thank you very much, I appreciate that. These are more just notes for me to remind me not to forget too much. And I know that some of you are new around this table, and the Vet Services Committee, we haven't been here recently, and Sables-Spanish has been traditionally a great supporter of the committee. So there are Vet Services Committees that cover all of Northern Ontario, and there's some remote or more remote areas in Southern Ontario. For example, the Bruce Peninsula has a Vet Services Committee because they don't have a veterinarian that is in Tobermory or even Wiarton or somewhere that's close by. So they're purchasing in services from a little bit further afield. So the whole idea with Vet Services Committee is to make sure that we are trying to attract vets to more remote places, and that where there's no vet, that we have locum deals where a vet does go on a regular basis, even if it's only a few times a year. And then for areas like ours, where we've traditionally been serviced from Manitoulin Island, it's been a lot of years since there was a vet in this community, but Dr. Robert Zenwick was here. I was in logistic, some of us remember kids. You remember that?
Yeah.
It's been a lot of years since there was an actual large animal vet right close by. So we, the funding is primarily derived from the Ontario government through Ministry of Northern Development mines, also natural resources and so on now. But that funding primarily pays for extra travel costs for veterinarians. So every call that they make to Massey, for example, they would get a top up of so many cents per kilometer that would actually cover extra travel costs. And that's for a clinic like Scott Veterinary Services or Island Vets, which are servicing the Massey area. That's just ensuring that they can actually do business here and not be losing money on a per call basis. And then if it's emergency work, they get top up on top of that helps pay extra costs for, whether that's an off hours or a holiday or something like that, or a time when the vet is actually on vacation and they need to have somebody come in to do their work for them. So that's the whole idea behind the Vet Services Committee. Now, when I say we as municipalities, I mean you as municipalities have supported the model in the past because we have a small amount of costs on other things. So one of our jobs as the Vet Services Committee is to be actually doing the work of promoting moving to the north to potential vets, so students or vets that might be interested in moving, making sure that the information is out there about veterinary clinics that are for sale and trying to actually encourage vet clinics that are remote to be purchased and held on to, so that we don't have to do even more locum work. And when I refer to locum work, there's veterinary areas, Kapuskasing, for example, that haven't had full-time large animal veterinary now for I've been on this committee now for 7 years, and they haven't had one in that whole time. So for that time, they were getting serviced by a locum vet with, they had an actual written deal with a locum vet who would come at a regular interval. And then they did have, for a short interim, a veterinarian that had graduated but was interested in, at least for a short time, filling a position, and that worked well. But he was kind of under a deal where he was going to be promoted to take over a clinic somewhere else, so he's gone again. So these are really complicated situations in a lot of cases, and our committees are basically committees of farmers who have an interest. We're mostly large animal farmers, and we have an actual interest in making sure that the model is upheld. So the Ontario government is the biggest funder. There's a fair few municipalities around the north, not huge numbers, but mostly municipalities like Sables-Spanish, where there's a larger number of large animal farms. So that kind of covers the second page there as well. So some other things that we might be looking at there that the municipal funding might get used for. When I use the acronym NCON, it's the Northern Producer Animal Health Network, and that's basically all of the vet services committees together. So we meet basically once a year typically. More recently we've gone to regular online meetings, and so I think this fall we've had 4 or 5 meetings, and it's working actually quite nicely. I think that lots of organizations like ours have found that we are able to do business a little bit better than we were before. Now that we're getting everybody online and really making more efficient use of our time. So covering some of those costs for online meetings or what have you, educational programs, which might include educational programs for the vet committees themselves. It might include educational committees or events for veterinarians, and it has in the past also included and will more in the future educational events for first responder services, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And it's noted that recruitment is a part of our responsibility. So in recent times, right here in our municipality, things that our large animal groups have been involved with and continue to be. College Boreal actually has a veterinarian who lives in our municipality. Dr. Nancy Waddell teaches the veterinary technician program at College. I think last year they had, they say it was 17 students. They're a little bit smaller. I think they were 9 this year. And I had them out at our farm just about 3 weeks ago. They spent a day with us to learn specifics around dairy. And so, and things that aren't necessarily specific to dairy. We'll do activities like teaching them to properly needle animals. We actually get to stick our arm in the cow and do some checking. It's fun stuff. I won't go into any more detail on that.
Just going on that, just because I know that the laws are all very different now than they were 30 years ago. Are they, with, like you said, the shortage of vets, it's, and then they don't want to go into large animal, and they only want to work 9 to 5. Are they making, I guess, like the nurse practitioner equivalent?
Yeah.
Are they trying to get there so that you can at least use the text more out to your calls, and they are working on that?
Yes, and that is a big part of what College is doing with that program in particular. Yeah, and I think it will. Yeah, I think it's going to have an impact. I don't think there's too much to say that it won't. What I'm hearing from vet technicians that have graduated, and I could mention a few, and some that have lived here in our municipality. What happens, or what we often see is that their average earnings as a vet tech ends up being somewhere. It's not a really great wage. Like if we're maybe talking about $20 per hour type jobs.
Yes.
And then that person finds that, they get into the workforce, they find they've got good skills, they've got good communication skills almost all the time because a lot of them deal with clients and they get to know animals so that they get a little bit of skill in some other area. They've got all these nice skills that fit other industries, and next thing you know, they're gone to a $25, $35 per hour job in some other industry because it's available and they've got good skills. And so I guess we need to probably learn to live with that for right now. I think that veterinary practices are going to catch up eventually. But I think what's going to happen is we're going to see it's going to be a fairly high turnover type of position for a while until the veterinary practices figure out the economics of it and manage to catch up. Part of the economics of catching up is teaching the provincial government what the real costs are. And I don't think that they're being naive, but they like that they can see that there's a $500,000 budget line at the provincial level that goes out every year, knowing that it does maintain a certain level of service, keeps a good, not to be, what's the word about being disappointed or figuring that it's a lost cause in some way, but I think the federal government or the provincial government wants always to be able to take credit for something that's good news, but they're not always doing a really proper evaluation of the program and keeping up with the funding that is going to actually place vets and keep practices healthy by making sure that the funding is there. So, yeah, I guess for me and how I look at the whole greater picture right now, it's important that we keep encouraging the provincial government to understand where their funding is going and that they need to keep up because there has been talk, not necessarily a lot in recent years, but there has been talk over time of just dumping the program. And I think they like times when they go into election mode and a program like this kind of gets suspended for a while. And then they get to kind of re-announce it and get that good news bump of here's another program that we're doing that's good for our rural community and so on. Yeah, I don't know if that necessarily answers all of the questions, but you get a sense of where we're at. We had a student from the University of Glasgow, that was a few years ago, but she just graduated this year, and she is now practicing in a Sudbury clinic. She, in my opinion, because she did work on my farm, she has great large animal skills, and I hope that she's a smart kid. I hope that she ends up with a practice at some point in time in large animal. I think she's well situated for it. She's working in a practice that does have a certain amount of horse veterinary, but they're not a designated clinic under the program. Anyhow, small vetteries. We keep looking for kids like that. We'll eventually get some placed. So I mentioned about first responder training. So Farm and Food Care Ontario was established out of a couple of different educational organizations. They've been around for about 8 or 10 years now, and their predecessor organizations were a separate livestock group and a separate crop care and herbicide training group, and they brought those two together, and they're an educational organization and have a really good strong network around ag training, and so they were well situated to start doing training for first responders, and that was an identified need. A truck goes over on a remote section of highway and you've got a bunch of first responders standing there with 30 cows crowded around that don't necessarily know what to do next. So the idea was that this Farm and Food Care now does some training, and I think that is probably something that we need to think about as a municipality. I have to say we're really lucky here. You guys know that of our fire service here, a lot of them have large animals, like a lot of them grew up on local farms or have some certain background in animal handling. We're pretty lucky that way. But there have been incidents in our municipality. You'll probably also know that it hasn't been so many years ago that down in Leopard there was a horse had to be put down, and there was a lot of concern around how that happened, right? And whether the first responder in that case really did what they had to, if they really took action in the most appropriate way, and if they maybe had the training, that might have gone differently. So that is something that our Vet Services Committee promotes, and for municipalities like ours, that's probably something we should be considering. So there's actually been 2 vet services studies recently. Acer Consulting is a group out of Guelph. They work very closely with University of Guelph just an evaluation of how the funding is going, and so that's being addressed directly to the provincial government. And so I hope that some of those concerns that I've mentioned are going to be addressed directly. So there's a little bit about us. You'll recognize most of the names on our committee are Sables-Spanish representatives. Traditionally, we had somebody from Chelmsford area, and we continue to have some good contacts there. But I think the other concern is that some of the names on that list are farmers who've been in the business for a long time and aren't necessarily going to continue to sit on committees like ours. And so we're always looking for new people to join the Vet Services Committee as well. And you can find us on Facebook. I've got a page there. I haven't been necessarily updating it regularly, but I did let people know that I'd be here tonight. And it's good to just kind of share some information when we get the chance. So the request there is to have an allocation of $1,000 from townships of Sables-Spanish River each for 2022, which we haven't. I think it's, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it was budgeted in 2021 either, but I think it was in 2020. So it's been a couple of years. So I'm just suggesting that that be updated to $1,000 a year starting for this year, and hopefully that you'd be considered for 2023 as well. And I'm happy to answer any questions. I know it sounds a little bit like a complicated model, but I think it's effective from the standpoint of having, what it does is it gives folks like us and those whose names are listed there, really direct representation to the veterinarians. And that's the most important part of the program. We can talk about the $500,000 from the provincial government and all of that, but the really important thing is that the vets themselves have an understanding and a good appreciation themselves of how important the program is. And I didn't put down values there, but these contracts are basically $40,000 contracts. So the contract that covers this side of Sudbury would cover wards 1 through 4 in Sudbury. So basically it covers everything from over the hill at Nairn all the way over to Valcarin and everything on this side, Chelmsford and so on. And it actually includes Chapleau and so on. So if a farmer from Chapleau was calling for emergency services, not that there would be an obligation for a veterinarian to attend, but if there was an agreement that yes, I'm going to go and take care of that, that veterinarian would have the opportunity to apply under the program to have that extra cost paid for. So it's basically a $40,000 contract. Of that $40,000, it's a bit of a guess, but I'd say probably $25,000 of it is spent for Sables-Spanish, and the other 15 would be other areas, Baldwin, mainly Baldwin and you know this side of Sudbury, like Naughton and so on. But they do occasionally make calls into Chelmsford and so on. And then Manitoulin Island, for example, they would actually have 2 contracts. So there would be a contract for East Manitoulin and a contract for West Manitoulin, both $40,000. And when you think about it, $120,000 split up between those veterinary clinics is a good chunk of money.
Yeah.
But if you looked at their travel costs that they spend on some of those calls, it gets extraordinarily high. So that's the whole idea. I'm happy to answer any other questions about it. And I don't know if you're going to consider the request right now or put it on the table for later. But
So Keith, if a ratepayer was to ask, that I found out that, the township is giving $1,000 for this, what will we say in response as far as how does this go to support? What does this $1,000 do? Is there specifics?
Yeah, if I was to, okay, so if you were to look at the budget of we're going to pay almost all of that money to the Northern Producer Group. That's the group of all of the Vet Services Committee together. Okay. So we have a secretary that coordinates all of our activities. So when I say that we're meeting 4 times this fall, we're having discussions around, okay, where exactly are we offering these learning programs for first responders? When and where are we going to put money into vet recruitment? What are the specifics around meeting with the veterinary group, and if there's any unresolved differences there that we need to think about. So it's largely it's going to be the actual cost around us as a committee representing those farm ratepayers and making sure that their concerns are heard. on a provincial basis. That's where that money is
Perfect, thanks.
primarily being spent.
Any other questions for Keith?
Is this just for large animals, you call it, or is it for all animals?
Yeah, so that's a really important question. So it is written in the act that it's for large animal veterinary, but horses, and sorry, when it says large animal veterinary, it says large food animal veterinary and equine. That's how it's, and the reason why it was written that way, because equine horses weren't always included, and the reason why they made that change, and I'm going to tell you that I'm not really clear on the history, I think it was in the 80s or maybe early 90s. Like, this program has been in place now since late 70s, and they made that change because they had a recognition that to be supportive of large animal veterinary, that those were the same veterinarians that were doing equine, and they couldn't hardly tell them, no, we're gonna train you and make sure that you're great at large animal veterinary, but we don't care about horses. Because all of those veterinarians were saying, but hold on, like a third of my business is equine.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna tell me I have to go out and see all the rest of those guys and do extra costs there, but I can't do the same for equine. And so that's how that ended up getting included. Do I make it sound like I'm horse unfriendly? There's always a lot of question around equine and how it's dealt with, but it's been included now for a lot of years.
Does it cover pork too? Like, because I'm trying
It
to
does.
remember what it's the food industry,
Yes,
so chickens.
food animal. And it does actually cover poultry as well.
Poultry,
It does.
okay, I thought
But
so.
here's a real kicker. There's actually only one full-time poultry veterinarian in all of Ontario.
I believe it.
I mean, it's the nature of having an animal that the animal itself has such a small value that it's population medicine, right? That one guy only deals with, like right now, he's probably over his head with avian flu, right? Because that's the only issue.
Yeah.
Whereas small flock, if they get an avian disease and there are only 10 birds to begin with and 5 die, it's kind of like,
Yeah.
really, am I gonna spend $500 to go somebody who's only got another $25 worth of stock left?
Do you have anybody in the area that, was taking the veterinary course?
Yeah, so we do actually have a kid from River Road who's aiming to go, like she's starting in Guelph this fall coming, and it's her aim to go toward veterinarian. But I mean, lots of kids can change their mind in that time.
Yeah.
And there is a relative of mine who's going to do her her first, what do they call it when they're in the field learning?
Like co-op?
Yeah, it's like co-op. They got a particular name for it, but internship. Thank you. It's an internship. So she's doing an internship in New Lister this coming summer, and I'm hopeful that she might be down here, not the following summer. If we can get her the following summer between year 3 and 4, then the chances of her coming back after year 4 are a lot better. So I'm hopeful.
That's good. It's good. So, like I say, the other services, the hospital services are offering, because I know, because my daughter was going to go into that, and she wanted going into the hospital services or lab work, but so she veered off the vet.
Yeah, and I think that is incumbent on, like, that is another thing that we are to do as a committee, is to, and that's a really hard one, but we should be there in the high schools and so on, right? Getting the message in, let's try and identify some kids that we can channel. The other problem that we really have, and it's a provincial mindset that we have, is that everybody thinks they need to go to Guelph. Well, as evidenced by that one kid, like, she was off to Glasgow because she could get in. It wasn't any more expensive, even with the travel costs. Her costs were still very controlled. And then they just have a really great, not that Guelph doesn't, they have a really great, strong, large animal program there, and she was happy for it.
Great experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And we gotta find, like, we've gotta find those ones and try and get them channeled where they should be going, right? Like, that's the really tricky part. Now, not to extend it too long, you maybe are familiar, there's a lot of, the whole veterinary practice in Ontario now is being franchised. And there's large multinationals that are buying up veterinary clinics all over Ontario, and they're franchising them. And that, I'm not gonna say that that's a worse model, because it frees up the capital that a lot of younger business people would have had to shovel into it, so they can still get in there and manage a clinic and be doing what they're loving without having to worry about investing $1 million worth or whatever, how much ever capital. But it's going to change the industry from the extent that then when you start and you're starting with a franchised operation, it maybe doesn't give the ones who might have that mindset of becoming a business person that that's their first and foremost interest, right? But those are special people to begin with.
It's great that we have Nancy here in the area too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. My sister-in-law is still doing veterinary work in Cyprus. She's a small animal vet. There's veterinarians around. It's a challenge to make sure that we were getting a certain number of them.
We need the service.
Anyone else? No? Well, thanks Keith for that presentation. I'm sure we can all appreciate what this does for our local agricultural sector.
Yeah, for sure. You want to move on to the next one?
No. That being said, be it resolved that we allocate $1,000 for each of 2022 and 2023 to the West Sudbury Veterinary Services Committee as a contribution to the work of veterinary services in our municipality. Do you have a mover? Harold, second. Mike, all in favor? Carried.
Keith, the training our vet tech, how long was that?
Yeah.
I thought all that was what we were saying. They were small, and all put together the same.
Now on to the next. Yeah, you're going to be clearing out of the way so that Amanda can fire us up there.
Keith, you supposed to sit when you're.
Yeah, wherever. Yeah, that makes it easier for you guys to look this way. Absolutely. Yeah, that only makes sense. There you go. Thank you, Amanda. There's probably going to be some things that I missed, but I think most of the, I kind of felt comfortable wandering around and standing and so on, swaying back and forth.
Where's the light?
Yeah.
There we go. Good. No, that's
I think you guys have some of the same notes there, is that right? Pretty much the same stuff. All right, so. So this is kind of the end. Let's go back all the way back up to the start there. That is the request. We're going to get to that. Oh, sorry, I get to do that.
You get to do
I apologize. Oh, just quickly back up here. There. All right, got it.
You can go full screen.
Okay.
Start a
I
slideshow.
probably could if I knew how.
Just at the
Yeah.
top.
Yeah, do it for me. Thank you. Thank you. You're awesome.
So we got the
All right, so I don't know if word's getting around, if that's going by word of mouth yet or not, but we are actually planning a farm show event. So I want to start by just making everybody aware, if in case you're not, that we had an extremely successful fair this past year. I'm sure that you knew that through word of mouth and having been there that it was successful. But financially, you were talking to your sister, who's our treasurer. And she's told us that she's not continuing as treasurer. We could talk a little bit about where we're at in terms of our volunteer force at the Ag Society and so on, but we are going to be looking for good people, both around the board table and to help with staff in this event as well. So we're somewhere to the black this year of about $70,000, and that is pretty rare. We applauded when she told us that. Yeah, it was fantastic, and kudos to Jackie and to my wife Diane and Isabel Coates she's a tremendous person to work with, and then all the other volunteers all of us who got to just kind of follow along and do good things with them. But those three ladies really carry a lot of good weight when it comes to getting things done, and so it was a fantastic show. So it was not really off of the energy of that, but we have the good opportunity to use the energy off of that. It was David Thompson from Rural Agricultural Innovation Network. They are out of Algoma University and Sioux, and David and others in his organization had been batting around the idea of a farm equipment show. And they were well aware, having worked with Landback, that there's been Manitoulin Trade Fair for many years, and you probably know that was being run biennially in Little Current, and they had great crowds, done really good stuff with that particular event. Not really agriculture oriented in any way, but had like good stuff, lots of small equipment and just interesting things, and lots of stuff for folks that I refer to as weekenders that are just interested in what's going on and finding the right stuff. And so Rain's question to their friends at Landback was, would you consider an ag farm show? And the answer was, we haven't decided yet what we're even doing with the Manitoulin Trade Fair, because they haven't returned it yet since COVID, and they still haven't decided. And so it just was a happenstance that David Thompson and I were talking, and he was kind of just looking for my ideas because they were kind of looking for some support, and he wanted to hear a farmer's sense of it and so on. And I said, well, because he even asked me about Espinal. I said, yeah, good facility, but if you're going there to the arena and field, nothing against it, but it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. It's a good facility, but it's going to be expensive. Why wouldn't you come to Massey Fairgrounds? So we talked about it and what we had to offer, and he said, yeah, like he was fully convinced. Now, the catch was, you're maybe familiar with Earlton Farm Show, which is run on one side or the other of Easter, depending on where Easter falls in a given year. They're usually aiming for first or second week of April. And they have a good solid show with approximately 60, 70 exhibitors, but it's all inside the arena and nothing else, because there's still snow on the ground. They're not doing anything outside. And I said to David, you know, we can't, because they were thinking we're going to pick up all of the exhibitors and everything from Earlton, and 2, 3 days or 7 days later put them down in Little Current or Espanola or wherever. I said, well, you can't do that in Massey. One, our good building is full of wintertime storage, and two, like, wouldn't the advantage of this being doing it during season when we can actually have guys looking at crops and investigating barns and actually getting around the neighborhood and seeing what's going on. So that was the whole discussion there, and this has only been getting discussed. That was late September that David and I first talked. And so I said, well, I'll take it to the Massey Ag Society and we'll see what they have to say about it. Got very good response there. I've talked to lots of exhibitors and we've been getting nothing but really positive interest in it. So that's where it all started out as a discussion. And how come I'm not going page down? What am I doing wrong, man?
Now we go good, but
That's an arrow?
Yeah.
Neither one. How come? Done? Let's try enter.
Might have to exit.
Ah, there we go.
There you go.
And so how do you get into it in the first place?
I think you could go at the top,
If
our
you go to
slideshow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sit during the
Yeah.
top slideshow, yeah,
And then
click on
just press
slideshow,
current
and is
slide.
there an option view slideshow?
Start from first slide or
No,
third
from
slide?
current
Third
slide.
There.
And then I think you can press enter after that.
So yeah, it's not just Wayne and ourselves discussing this. College Boreal came on right at the start. They're growing a good agricultural program at College, and good for them. Huron North Community Economic Development. Oh yeah, this is our neighbors down to the west. So that's Cynthia Campbell. She's working out of the Blind River, and I think they're representing North Shore and maybe a few other municipalities there. FedNor program, Industry Canada's FedNor program is Eric Thiesmeyer, and he actually does a fair bit of agricultural work on Manitoulin these days. And I think what we're going to be looking to for them, and we can kind of highlight that a bit when we get to to the proposed budget is the actual help in the marketing area, because that's kind of what they've got to start out funds for. Economic development would be our own LaFlash Foothills group, and then which Amanda is working with now, I think, yeah?
And Louisa.
Yeah, Louisa, obviously, yeah. We were putting some money into her position for sure. So land back being LaFlash, and then Manitoulin, are they business? It's not advancement corporation, what is it? Yeah, you know what I know. Ourselves at Massey Agricultural Society, Northern Ontario Food Innovation Alliance is basically the same style of group as the Rural Agricultural Innovation Network, where RAIN basically covers projects in Sudbury, Manitoulin, and Algoma. NOFIA covers projects in Temiskaming, Nipissing, Cochrane, and parts of Sudbury East. Ontario Federation of Agriculture, their office is up in New Liskeard, but quite involved, and Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs still run most of their Northern Ontario group out of Verner. And then I'm also involved with Sudbury Soil and Crop Improvement Association. We met recently and I heard some good support there as well. So those are the main groups at this time. Still not working for me.
I think that's the space bar.
Space bar.
Yeah.
Is it my computer? I'm blaming it on my computer. Sorry.
I mean, that's the.
Escape. If I just center this, you don't.
That's good.
Yeah, it's good to see. So you're going to see that on the budget, but basically we're looking at a bit better than a third of the cost being from exhibitors' fees, and then a big part of the remainder just straight up sponsorships. The model is, most of what we modeled here is basically after what Wilton Farm Show has done. Management and labor costs are going to be covered by approximately half by federal government funding, like Canada Summer Jobs and similar programs. And then, of course, our own volunteer work, and hopefully some municipal government support. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Over here. So Massey Agricultural Society has basically committed to being the lead organization, and the trade-off is, and because, you know, RAIN, and kudos to Dave, I think he has a great idea, and he was the one who was pushing it, but he wasn't like, we have to be the organization that's doing this. And they're not set up that they need to be making money at stuff. Not that that's our purpose. Massey Ag Society is non-profit. But I think that, you know, everybody sees the good sense in it. We're centrally located. We've got the right fairground facilities. There's a good contingent of farms right here in the area, and we can certainly do on-farm stuff here. So I think that all of the right conditions line up that way. And then the benefit is that, yeah, Massey Ag Society is going to take some risk here, but we'll also see the benefit, right? And I think that we already know that we've got a good leadership team at Massey Ag Society that can do this work. So then, FedNor is a possibility for kind of helping with some of the management ideas. Actually, recently, Landback has really stepped up to say that they are going to help oversee the actual position management. So we are interviewing tomorrow and Wednesday for a co-op student for University of Waterloo who would start in early January or mid-January at the latest, and would be with us until April, and then that person could be replaced with another cooperative student, either from Waterloo or Guelph or both in the summertime. So yeah, I don't know that I spoke to it, but we just had a meeting the other day where we decided on the title. I hope you like it because it's kind of official now that we will be calling this Agri North Expo Agri Nord. And not that we'll necessarily be able to offer all services bilingually from the start, but we do have a good solid help from the Ontario government to provide a certain amount of bilingual services. So I think that's only naturally another good sales point. So obviously you guys all know this, Massey Fairgrounds, good site. And then there's some discussion as to exactly how we're doing the on-farm programs. So we anticipate that the Emery building at Massey Fairgrounds is basically going to be wall-to-wall full with exhibitors. And then the site itself, for any that are interested in doing ride and drive type exhibits, we might be able to do a certain amount of other demos and maybe even some crop type work on site. If we can kind of sort out exactly what that looks like in time and do things properly, we might be able to do quite a lot on site that way. But the anticipation is that mostly anything that we're going to look at in field or that has to do with livestock, that guys are going to get onto a bus and get a drive out to a local farm, that talk there with the experts on the farm. And then the possibility of pasture management and livestock barns. So we did hear the concern at last week's meeting that we don't want to lose the focus from the exhibitors that are paying money to be at the fairgrounds, but we are planning to run this, we will be running this on July 28th and 29th, a Friday and Saturday. And the expectation is that we might do programs on the shoulder of the day. So on the Thursday in the evening before the exhibit halls open on the Friday in the evening, and intersperse stuff a little bit so that there's plenty of time for people to spend with exhibitors and still see stuff on site, on farm. And obviously we've got good long days for late July, so we anticipate that we're going to be able to pull that off. So when I was talking about leadership team, we kind of identified these 10 areas that we need to make sure are properly staffed, and obviously some of them are doubled up there where we anticipate needing an assistant and so on. Most of the shows are really running strong on making sure that exhibitors are well taken care of and that they really extend that program into evening stuff and making sure that guys do hang around, and the exhibitors love that and they love paying for that. So we're planning to try and provide all of those types of services, including doing after-hours beverages and all of that kind of good stuff as well. I would say out of these 10 key positions, we probably have 3 or 4 filled for sure right now, but that does mean that we're going to be looking for some other good key people from our community to help out with this. And I'm not suggesting that you guys need to do the recruitment, but I think that for everybody of leadership in our municipality, it's going to be a matter of us getting the information into everybody's hands and us all being good raw supporters, that every meeting we go to, the pamphlets are coming out or whatever's coming out to say to people, yeah, we're looking at this new show in Sables-Spanish, we're going to be doing this in late July, and we're expecting that you're going to be sending some people our way, kind of thing. And then we've got lots of good ideas of stuff that will be added on, that would be some of it on the periphery of the program. We've actually already got an equipment dealer that's looking at a full commitment. You'll be excited to hear that there's the possibility of an equipment dealer, a new equipment dealer servicing the area, not necessarily in our municipality, but there's talk of a new service arrangement for the North Shore, so that's really exciting for us, and we hope that they'll use our program as their kickoff. And then we're looking at youth programming with 4-H Club, and being a summer program, we were hoping and interested at first, looking very strongly at a September show so that we could include more education through schools and so on, but I think that we've agreed that the summertime is the time that we really want to highlight and stick to for now, and then maybe we'll consider a change of dates if we need to in the future. Somebody asked me recently, are we talking about something that's going to be annual? And for sure, like the Earlton Farm Show is successful because they are annual. It's something that their communities become accustomed to, the same as people here are accustomed to Massey Fair. We don't want to lose focus on Massey Fair, but we view this as an entirely separate opportunity, right? Like, it's a separate set of exhibitors, it's very business, it's very professional. Not to say that Massey Fair shouldn't be those things, but Massey Fair is a fun, very family-oriented, fun time that's wrapping up the summer, whereas this is going to be really farm-focused and really pinpoint on these are services that you should know about as a farmer, whether you're a commercial farmer or a small farmer. You're going to come and learn something, you're going to see something that's interesting for your business, and you're going to pick up something and take it home with you that's going to be valuable to you. So that's where we're kind of coming from.
It's a step back in time, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to kind of highlight the fact that we're not, this isn't just, we're not just talking equipment, and we're not just talking livestock. Like, we're talking about an industry that uses real estate services, uses financial services, insurance, you name it, it's all something that hopefully you're gonna come and find there. And yeah, behind that, right at the bottom there too, like farm and governmental organizations that are involved in this stuff, right? And they really try and do a professional job of making sure that everybody that should be there is there. So stuff that we're not necessarily very far forward on, although I have something fun to show you actually. We don't have to go through too much of my other mail here to find it, but I just received somewhere a nice set of suggested logos for this event. Oh man, that's fantastic. So here we are. Oh, come on up. I suppose I need to be online to see them. I'll try and find them before I leave and show you. There's some pretty fun ones. You can give me your idea as to which are your favorites, because so it was kind of saying that we haven't done a lot of work in marketing, but we've already started that. Now that we've got a name, we've already got logos coming forward as well, and you'll be surprised how professional and good looking they are. So yeah, just some other things like, and not to say that these things are out of reach for myself or other volunteers in this municipality, but we just still need to get our head around exactly what are we talking about in terms of food and beverage service, exactly how are we going to handle accommodations, or is that something that we need to worry about, or are we just going to make the local hotels and motels aware of it and let them deal with it, and then any other potential tourism partnerships. I have heard from quite in good earnest discussion with some of those farm dealerships saying, yeah, you know what, this is a good opportunity for us to pack up a couple of our employees and let them take their families with them and have a few days of vacation at the same time, and that is a good potential highlight of a July show is shopping it as a come and do some business, but also spend your vacation time with us as well. So yeah, we're basically, it's not exactly built on 70 exhibitors, but basically looking at somewhere in the $15,000 to $20,000 worth of revenue from exhibits and vendors. And then charging extra for extras, so those that need electrical and water. The government support would be you guys. The Canada Summer Jobs is basically 50% of the summertime employee costs. Corporate sponsorships and business partnerships at $12,000 would be, so let's say for example that Syngenta Ag, based out of St. Mary's, Ontario, is really interested in doing lots of field plots, but they don't feel like sending a couple of employees up here to do the planting, where we would say, yeah, we've got a local farmer who's going to host the plot, is going to coordinate what planting needs to be done. You send us the signage and so on, and it'll be put up. And in order to save you all of that labor and headache, you're going to give us a corporate sponsorship for X dollars. And that's the way a lot of small shows like this are gaining extra revenue. So we put in a line for $12,000 revenue in terms of corporate sponsorships and business partnerships. And then it would also be things like those after-hour programs that the after-hours food tonight is sponsored by Haley Foods or whomever, and they've got a big spread of cheese. And so we do that work and hire the caterer to do that work, but they just put in a big plug of sponsorship, and we put their, they get the branding for it.
Will you be contacting like Ballet and other large, because I mean, they use our municipality grounds.
Yeah.
They have that, you know, they benefit from our municipality, so it'd be nice to see them maybe supporting something.
Yeah, for sure. And I like that idea. I guess I'm going to leave that to some of our discussions with Industry Canada, because they kind of have that expertise of knowing who to go after and slot in for certain types of opportunities. So I'll definitely be asking Eric Teesmeyer how he sees that coming into play. I think that from our standpoint, probably we'll go first to related industries like forestry. So, you know, the Domtar and Ecom obviously would be the natural first step, because maybe once this show is growing and solid in its agricultural focus, then if we're going to do some further growth, maybe we're looking at a possible forestry show or something like that. And then to have them already on board as a corporate sponsor would only make sense to make that jump. That's not to say that we shouldn't be talking to Valley. And definitely lots of local farmers have done work with Valley in terms of land reclamation and site
Well,
reclamation.
that's what I was thinking, that it would be
So
their
there's
rights in
definitely
the
some
mining, so I mean,
Yep.
you know, they have their impact.
And for us at Sudbury Soil and Crop, we've actually got a university professor on board who's done that work directly. Like he sits with the Soil and Crop organization, and he already works alongside with Valley on some of that work. So yeah, that's a good fit too, for sure.
So this is going to be an annual thing, right? It's not a one and done?
I think so. Like I think it's got every potential to, and you know, I guess, you know, and not that it's all on Keith Emery. I think what's on Keith Emery is making sure that we are building the leadership team around it as part of Massey Agricultural Society, and keeping it not only focused but finding that weight of volunteer capacity, make sure we do a really good job of this. I think if we do a good job of this, I think it's annual.
Yeah, I think you're putting in a lot of work for 2 days.
Exactly. Yeah. And they do up in Earlton, but they do a good show. Like it's 2 days, but they do a really nice show. People are keen for it every year. They get a good audience, and then you pack her up and send them home and do it all over again the next year. And that's a successful model for them. There's no reason why it shouldn't be for us as well. Yeah, I don't think there's too many questions about that necessarily. On the expense side, I mean, it's all the same, dividing up. My only concern on the expense side would be, what if media and branding and stuff like that does cost us a whole lot more than even, let's say that even we do have that $7,500 or something coming from an organization like Industry Canada. It's probably pretty easy to blow through dollars sometimes. I mean, that's on us, it's on our treasurer and so on to kind of keep our costs under control, but I'm confident we can do it. And I think that I've already heard really great support from the community, where you say, well, we're starting this new thing, and you just hear people say, well, we're going to help. Well, just let us know what we can do, kind of. And that's the attitude to have, right? That's how you do save money on stuff, just making sure that you're...
Well, I'm sure the business community will be on board.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this has a lot of potential.
It really does. It really does. Yeah. Not that it needs to be discussed a whole lot, but I mean, you folks and folks like myself, we often have discussion about how the Mennonite will fit in. And you probably don't know necessarily. I didn't even necessarily know when David was asking me and we first got talking about some of this stuff, how they fit in. So I've had that discussion with John Blumman in particular, because he is the local bishop, or one of three in the leadership of the local Mennonite church. And they're willing to consider that we might even have farm tours at some of their farms. But they typically don't get involved in farm shows in the south, and it's not because of anything to do with corporate involvement or anything like that. It's to do with whether there is the perception of competition and making one business look better than another. And so some of those things are always kind of a little tricky to stick handle, but anyways, we're having those discussions with them, and we want to make sure that we do have an expectation that they feel welcome to be as involved as they should be.
I hope so.
Yeah, I would hope so too.
They might be more comfortable in a demonstration, like
Yeah.
just educational,
Yeah, exactly.
learning and education.
It's interesting, already, I mean, our barn's only a couple of years old and they're all interested in seeing it, but already in the summertime, like every couple of weeks, one of those white buses drives down my laneway and a whole bunch of guys load out and they say, hey, you want to go and have a look at your barn right now? They're already interested, so being able to have that type of educational program is a super benefit to them.
No,
for sure.
this makes me think of your barn a lot, because every step of the way when you were building it, you were sharing it online, and I was sharing it, and
Yeah.
this has the potential to bring all that.
Yeah, that's right, and really kind of highlight what we do here as farmers for sure. And
Yeah, it's
And-
important for people to know what you do.
opening our doors to let people see. So the request specifically is for a $5,000 donation to the Massey Ag Society, and I should warn you, my director partners over at the Ag Society are going to be coming back again in the early summer task for another $1,000 or $2,000 or whatever it might happen to be. I know that we did have a lot of black ink this year. We might not need to feel the need to put in any type of request this year. But we see this as a startup event. We see your $5,000 as being on board to say, yes, this is not just Massey Ag Society, this is our community saying we need to do this and we need to fund it properly to get it going. And so that particularly would be that request. And then I don't know that we have a specific request towards the economic development staff or others, but I think we see that potential. We've already got Louisa coming to meetings and such and being aware of what's going on. And so I think to be able to ask for the support of municipal staff where it looks like there's a need and that they're available to be helpful, that's a reasonable request to make as well. But maybe I should ask for other questions before we discuss that stuff. I mean,
I was definitely going to mention municipal staff to help any way we can, in the same way we do with the fair.
Yep, or with the Voyager or Massey Marathon, and I'm dating myself.
Yeah.
All that Voyager Marathon for life. Bite your tongue. Massey Marathon.
I'm a little curious about the timing. It's pretty close to the Massey Fair time.
Yeah, so that was the number one concern around the board table at Massey Ag Society. So originally we were looking at pushing it as late into September as we felt we could.
That's what I heard, yeah.
And that was a lot my own personal thinking, saying that I thought that farmers were primarily looking to see crops that were finished and standing in the field. And then we talked to a lot of exhibitors, and almost all the exhibitors' reaction was, if we see the value that we need to be there, we're going to be there regardless of when it is, January to December. We're going to show up if we see that our clientele is there. But for some of them, and I can refer particularly to the Lely dealer in Temiskaming, Alex Rivera, and Alex just said to me, oh man, I'm a businessman, and when I need to be there as a businessman, I'm gonna send somebody or I'm gonna be there myself. But he said, I am so busy at the end of September, I'm just looking to surface for air. And then I had the same question in front of my partners at Sudbury Soil and Crop and the potato guys. And granted, we're only talking about a half a dozen farmers or whatever, but those guys were also like, when we start, usually the last week of August, after it's 6-7 weeks, we just run flat out. He said the only time you see a day off is when you get 2 days of rain in a row and we're fixing machinery. Or if you're lucky, you take Sunday afternoon and you put your feet up. Other than that, we're 7 weeks solid, end to end. Go. So they were kind of, personally, they were saying, well, you guys could do it in late September, but we might not be there. So we kind of heard that. I'm confident after the more we thought about it, we were like, well, we won't show the same things on July 28th and 29th as what we will on September 20th, but we we'll show a different stage of it and we'll be answering the same questions. So that's the important thing, is that guys will come and still find something that's relevant to them.
That was like my kind of thing I was wondering, is like, it's going to be very different from Massey Fair, right? That's
Oh,
your
yeah.
goal.
Oh yeah,
That's
this
your
is a farm
goal.
show.
So you're pulling in tourism because, I mean, it's limited. Is it also going to be a better opportunity, you think, for recruiting for, say, your 4-H, for the Massey Agricultural Society as well?
Yeah.
I've gone to the Massey Fair always. I've never felt the tug to be recruited. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's an opportunity missed.
Yeah.
It might be, we're already open. If I'm going to attend this, I mean, I'm going to the Massey Fair to see everything, but I'm bringing the kids and they want the rides and the noise, which I hate.
Yeah.
So I would rather be going to this. I think this, do you view this as a better opportunity for putting out
Yeah.
more, as to tug into people, hey, come join the 4-H, you know, how old are you, you know?
Yes, I think so. The number 2 concern we did hear at Massey Ag Society was that summertime is a hard time for us in our community as volunteers, period, because we tend to blow it off and be like, no, I'm going to the lake. But I think if we start our work now and make sure we have that in place well ahead of time, I don't think that'll be so much of a concern. For 4-H, you may know, like, we have a very strong 4-H club here, and it's the envy of a lot of places in the province. I mean, for a small farming community, and let's face it, farming is still the primary focus of the 4-H program. There's a lot of other communities who are wowed by what we do in a small farming place with our 4-H program. What it's going to do for our local 4-H program is offer the opportunity for just broadening it a little bit. We do a lot, obviously, with animals. We have a great calf club in the summer. We usually have anywhere from 25 to 40 participants, and that's always a great success. You know, the poultry programs and now goat programs in recent years have been super successful. Now we're going to have the chance to broaden it a little bit and go and add a crops program or
I'm
do
just
something
saying,
a
like,
little-
promotional material wise though. Like,
Yeah,
I don't want to say
oh yeah, it's gonna be,
a weaker area, but like, because like I'm Webwood, Beauchamp subdivision.
Right, okay, fair
We're
enough.
not in the know.
Yeah, right,
If I want to know about 4-H, I have to Google, I have to look it up. Like,
right.
I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one. I do like being approached. You know,
I hear what
if
you're
I'm
saying.
going to someplace,
Yes.
I'm already open.
Yeah.
So it would be, you know, maybe a platform to really be there with the brochures, handing them out, because
Yeah.
if you see an opportunity, you know, and like I said, the fair is just very busy and it's hot and it's loud. Whereas
That's true.
this one, I think you're getting the people that are like, hey, you
They're
know,
pretty focused on
or they're
what their kid
thinking
can
about a
learn.
hobby
and-
farm.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
you know, like you have your external people coming, but I think the local people that are here already could go, oh, let's go check it out.
Yeah, I think you're right. And to speak to that too, I don't think this is going to be just totally about commercial farms, because we won't survive on just making it about commercial farms. There are plenty of us, but not enough to make a really successful show. We do need to be aware that we're shopping this, and that's partly the Friday, Saturday dates as well, is that we're shopping this to people who are farmers on evenings and weekends, right? So for sure, that's a part of it. And then the other discussion that we've had that's kind of relevant to that is, you know, we've got to make sure that we're wide enough that we're incorporating everybody who has some farm interest. So we've already started putting together a really strong equine program, and we hope to have, like, we've got the facilities for it. Why not put on a really strong horse program as well, and make sure that it doesn't look like it's just food animal agriculture. It is also other large animals, especially horses. All right, I can talk about this all. You guys probably want to do other stuff.
No, we
Thank
have, we have to do it.
Yeah, you have to do other stuff. I really do appreciate you taking the time on it, though. That's wonderful, and I obviously it's my topic of interest. I've already put a good amount of my own volunteer time into it, but I think we're onto something. So.
Are you bringing the veterinary services into this farm show as well?
Yeah, of course, the vets themselves are always such busy people, it won't be that, but probably, like, our group will make an approach to all of the various organizations. So it just, veterinary services, you know, there will be a letter go out to the strawberry growers and the bison growers and everybody else and their sisters. Yep, for sure.
Thanks, Keith.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Do you want me to stick around for a few minutes, or is there any other questions that we haven't covered?
You can just send an email us the just things and stuff or some
Yeah.
volunteer opportunities and
And I think I've got pretty much everybody on email or some type of communication already, all right. And you're using that one specifically for council?
Township stuff, yeah.
Perfect. I'll make sure that I have that down that way.
All right, with regard to the farm show, do we want to discuss the amount of our donation? Do we want to do it by thousand? What are?
I'm good with the 5,000.
You can always surprise me and go higher too.
should have came over to higher ask.
If they spend 5,000 on a fishing derby, we can definitely
Yeah,
spend
for
5,000.
Yeah.
Oh, huge.
Potential spin-offs.
Yeah.
So, I didn't have to mention that was kind of a little bit intentional, that's where that,
Is that where the
that's
5,000?
kind of where that 5,000 came
You
from.
learn for more.
It's like,
They can always bring it down, but you know.
Was born yesterday.
So, be it resolved, we approve a donation to the Massey Ag Society in the amount of $5,000
For the farm.
for the farm show proposed to be held in 2023, and that these funds be included in the 2023 donation budget. Can I have a mover? Edie. Second, Mary Ann. All in favor? Harry, very good.
Yeah, you should.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Good luck.
We'll keep feeding you information, I know you guys are gonna be the best supporters.
I had hoped that Diane would have been here with you.
Oh, I should have brought her along, eh?
If you would accept this in her honor, the township is pleased to present you this in recognition of the accomplishments of the 4-H club in a third place finish at the Royal Winter Fair.
It's appreciated.
Very,
awesome.
very impressive.
Yes, yeah, it was. I got to join them there as well. It was very impressive. And those kids learned, like they took a lot of pride away from that and they learned a lot about
We were
themselves.
just beaming.
Yeah,
We were just
For sure.
beaming.
It was a good event for sure. Thank you so much. I might just send her back. I'll head home right now. Where's the bed? I'll send her back and she can get the picture.
Yeah, you know what she's gonna tell you, right? No. I'm good.
Thank you all.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Back to business. Consent agenda, be it resolved that items E1, G1, G2, and G3 contained on the consent agenda be adopted.
I'd like to discuss that.
Yeah, any questions, Harold?
Okay, yeah, I've got some concerns about that. This is the chief building official and building inspector positions.
Okay.
And from our position coming into it as the new counselors, we're basically looking at an employment contract, so to speak. Right? Now, from our side of the view, from this side of the table here, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm just saying I don't feel I have enough information on this to make a decision. The reason for it being that like, we're not showing any term. How long are we putting these people into it? There's nothing on the term. There's nothing about financial consideration, like what is our commitment for the term? Conditions of employment. Now I know they're under the regulations of the province, but we have our own concerns. We've had issues with different enforcement here and public cry out, so to speak. Maybe that's a little heavy on it, but so I would think that we should kind of start at the bottom and come up on this. We've had no discussion to set up different procedures for these officials. Like, do they know what are we going to say, you have to be here in a certain amount of time. I like the idea of the compliance officer changing from enforcement to compliance officer. That's agreed. I just think there should be, we need some more information before we make a move on this. And there already is a bylaw. It's in effect, right?
So I can answer all that, what's going on through your head right now. So we were contracted with Espanola. They hired an inspector and then farmed him out to ourselves, Baldwin, and Narren. At the end of September, they decided that they were going to terminate their contract. That was a 3-month notification. So as of December 31st of this year, we would no longer have a building inspector under that contract. So because council at the time was lame duck, they had no authority to hire. So that authority is delegated to me. So I negotiated a contract with the inspector that we are currently to be in effect for January 1st. Because one of the requirements as a municipality is you are required to have a chief building official. So we don't really have time to say well, actually, council has no choice but to appoint him as an inspector, because we need one by law. And I've already entered into a contract with him, just like any other employee. There is no term of employment. Like when I was appointed clerk, there's not a timeline when my employment ends. His is the same. There are notice provisions within there for termination, just as any employment contract is. The salary was negotiated, that's in that contract, and any other conditions. So this bylaw is more of a formality than anything else, because previously we were under Espinola's building inspector, our chief building official was Dan Rivet. So now that we don't have that contract, we need to have one. So Jeff Lapierre he has the qualifications to be chief building official, so we'll appoint him. And then Mark Leclerc is an inspector with Espanola that he's named in the bylaw, so that if Jeff is away, we can draw on that person to do inspections if something happens to be happening that is required. Because within the building code, there are timelines for inspections. So small buildings, regular permits, it's 3 days from the day you call. You have to have, if you're calling for an inspection, that inspector has those set number of days to get there and get that inspection. Otherwise, the person can continue. They don't, and then large buildings, other more complex, have different timelines. So you need to have an inspector on staff, and either it's contracted. So what we're doing, and the other bylaw that is kind of a rubber stamp by council is so what we're going to do, because Baldwin and Narren also need an inspector, we will farm him out to those 2 municipalities. So instead of us paying Espanola to do it, we'll get paid from the other 2 to continue. So the treasurer and I have come up with a rate based on the salary and benefits, and administration have come up with a rate that they've agreed to, and they've entered into this, they're entering into this contract with us.
Okay, I just...
Normally it doesn't happen that way.
I just feel
Normally
we're
it
on
is.
this, so
Yeah. Well, it was timing, and I didn't have time to wait until council met December 6th to try to hire a building inspector for January 1. That timeline just didn't work. So it was unfortunate that you're kind of stuck with what I had the authority to do, but that's the way it works. It had to move forward, and I couldn't sit and wait to see what anybody thought about who they wanted to hire to try to advertise. We did.
So,
Nothing else? I have just
I guess not.
Can I just address something? And especially since there's no public works going to be held in January. So I brought up at Public Works Committee that the gentleman who used to clean up the Walford Fire Hall and Walford Hall doors for free for 30 years can no longer do it.
Okay.
And I asked if Public Works could do that while they are there plowing anyway, since they plow the yard.
Why not?
Well, it has not been done, not even the fire hall. It takes I'm not shoveling snow. Sorry, I do that at home, but not great up there. So there's the two sets of main doors, there's the fire hall door. And it takes maybe 20 minutes to do. I was told at the Public Works meeting that the plow guy doesn't have time to get out and clean the doors. Well, I'm sorry, but Public Works was off the hook for 30 years. But the least they can do is clean up the fire hall doors.
Well,
Yeah.
we no
When
different
they're
than
there.
they're like the clinic, they have to go and walk
Right.
up and clean, they do the walkway at the clinic.
So I just, I'm circumventing the Public Works Committee because it hasn't been done.
Mm-hmm.
So Tina's done it on her way to work, so that's cool. But Mr. Hopkins can no longer shovel snow. He's 84 years old, and I don't expect him to. But physically, we're not sure what's wrong, but anyway. So I would appreciate if they would at least clean up the fire hall doors while they are there. Thank you.
Do we have a township representative that needs to see him quite a bit? Kind of drags around and monitors things?
Well, the
On Public Works, you mean?
crew supervisor does do patrol, various times throughout the day and whatever.
Is it too big an issue to have him go by there on patrol and do this?
But I mean, like,
I mean, we're paying him.
they
I
use,
don't know who wants to do it.
No, that's basic, but we're in a position, let's call it. Okay? When he's out on his patrol, he can, like, I mean, I would do it, I mean, we're paying him.
Like who cleaned up the fire hall in Massey, do you know? The Public Works?
probably. I mean, it's our facility, it's gonna be done, it's not a question of whether they have time,
Well,
they have to fit it in. So these are the two times with the
Glassy
power.
wall for doors.
I've seen him drag all around in a pickup truck, so you know what? Let's get something.
And there are shovels there, he doesn't even have to bring his own
Doesn't even
shovel.
have to bring a shovel.
Nope. Yeah.
No, I'll talk to them.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank
Ann.
We want this to happen.
I just had a phone call before the meeting there tonight, so
Okay,
I thought I would bring that up. Sorry.
before we're done, we'll go around the table. Mary Ann, you got anything?
No.
Anything else? Chaz, anything else? Cheryl? Mike?
I know I was asked again by a few people, I had a few phone calls about moving the meetings to 7 o'clock
Oh,
on
yes.
Wednesdays. I'd really like to try and accommodate that, some people are workers.
Okay.
If we can at least have a discussion at some point, so I can get back to them and say, you know what, we're discussing it, and
Is that to attend?
Six.
They just want to
people would
listen?
feel they have more of a chance to attend.
'Cause they
Either
can't-
that, or they said if we have the capabilities to live stream.
6 o'clock is, I'm making it work,
Well, we got used to it, eh?
Yeah.
but it's gonna be, it's a hard one for me to
7
do.
o'clock's hard for me, I'll be honest.
I have to leave early.
Yeah.
What's that?
I say, I usually have to leave early when I'm doing
Oh,
it.
you work early?
Yeah.
I get home a little after 5.
Yeah, you're good, commute, takes me 15 minutes to get here.
15 minutes, I just basically.
Yeah.
Well, I'm in the Norwich back again.
And I mean, everybody's on different schedules.
Yeah.
Well,
But just bringing
I
it
get out of
forward.
work at 2:30, so it's like,
Yeah.
whatever. And I don't work every day, so how does everybody else feel?
6 works really, really well for me, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah,
Sure.
six is,
I'm fine.
It's tight, but it
Summertime
allows me
is
to
not
just
gonna be-
bam it.
How about we split?
6:30.
I'll be coming in late.
Well,
I have 6:45.
I thought of that, 6:30.
Like if I'm working, then I'm not done till 6, so I won't make it here for 6, but I've come in late before.
Well,
I'm retired, so I'm good. Whatever you guys
So I
decide.
thought I was too.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Me too. Me too, and Cheryl, 6:30. I was the first one to fall off.
Yeah.
Now she's
Like whip down.
That's
Try to
right.
get you out half an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it gives you half an hour to sit down, let it digest.
Because it also means
Yeah,
you're
6:30 is
here till
fine with me. It's just more, like, you can, I do 6, I don't care, but it's just that people are
It's
asking.
getting
early.
excessive.
No, I
For them.
understand, and I've heard it before.
Yeah.
And the live
Counselor
stream is
Counselor Rivers brought it
tacky.
up.
Let's go 6:30.
Okay, 6:30.
Well, that's,
Our council
that's,
needs
that's
to-
our procedural bylaw.
That's a bylaw we have to
So
change.
it won't be the
Change
next
time.
meeting,
No.
So we can't do
it'll
it
be
until
the
the
meeting
next.
after.
Yeah.
But if everybody's fine with 6:30, then we'll have a
For next-
resolution for that next meeting.
I mean, what we could do if you want it for the 11th, we could pass a motion to start the meeting at 6:30 on the 11th.
And
And then the bylaw
pass
would
it.
be to put it permanently at
Yeah.
that. We could do
Okay,
that.
let's do it.
But the next meeting is the 11th?
Yes, January 11th.
Probably get all 3 meetings in the same meeting, you know?
Well, something like that. Because we already discussed it before the motion.
All meetings are here unless otherwise notified, right?
Correct.
6:30 will work.
Yeah, so we're taking a step.
I can live with 6:30.
And then it's a matter of getting our technology.
That's still an hour earlier than the town council meeting, just to be.
Yeah.
It seems like that.
You were actually working back then.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Are you Smokey the Bear?
Yeah.
you know what happens, eh?
Oh, just so I don't know that side.
So again, have a good look at this trailer licensing. We gotta make decisions. And I'm willing to listen to whatever you got.
And all of the previous council meetings are recorded and available on our website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can
Well,
go
they're on
back if you
YouTube.
missed the trailer, show, session.
I saw that.
Meeting? Yeah.
Perhaps review it. Would be, a good background for your prep.
When was that?
Viewing pleasure. That was in July.
Oh,
I wanna say.
It was the last week.
Is that the one that was in
last week
Walford?
in July.
No.
Last week of July,
The
first week
arena.
of August,
We were
but
talking
do go
about
back and then
Yeah.
you'll at least know
On Whalen Road.
both sides were well represented.
Yeah, yeah, both sides.
But both sides didn't get to really speak that much.
No,
Anyway, be it resolved that the January 11th, 2023 meeting shall commence at 6:30 PM. Mover? Mary Ann, second. Harold, all in favor? Carried.
6:30 it is.
Get this thing off.
Be it resolved that the time is 8:49 PM. And this meeting will be adjourned until the next regular meeting or the call of the chair. Have a mover? Edie, second. Casimir, all in favor? Carried.
Did you get yours?
No, I won't wait.